Nigeria, South Africa, two nations similar in several respects with shared aspirations. Nigeria and South Africa are the biggest economies in Africa, with significant influence not only on matters relating to the continent, but within the larger global system.
Cooperation between South Africa and Nigeria is a good signal to other African countries because it means that we have accepted to take our destiny in our own hands and grow according to our own pace and uniqueness. And so I see South Africa and Nigeria leading the way for other African countries to follow.
South Africa and Nigeria are committed by history. We are bound to be together and we cannot choose otherwise.
With a common history of colonial domination, the relationship between the two African powers is both historic and engaging at cultural, political, and economic levels. In fact, the inglorious era of colonial subjugation and control shaped and defined the early engagement between the two. While Nigeria was able to shake off the ignoble yoke of colonial control, securing political independence in 1960, not so for South Africa. The metropolitan European powers that maintained imperial stranglehold on most of Africa at that time held onto South Africa, then known as Cape of Good Hope. The British, Australians, and the Dutch found in the climate of the predominantly Zulu land in the southernmost tip of Africa warmth and comfort needed to establish grape and wheat farms. The Europeans, who had outrightly relocated, not only dominated the economy, but grabbed political power, forming a political party that introduced a system of racial segregation enforced through legislation and coercion. The rights of the majority were curtailed, and white supremacy was elevated, with people classified into racial groups: white, colored, Asians, and natives. Residences were segregated. Non-white political representation was completely abolished, and the blacks were consigned to subhuman existence in crowded, less fertile settlements. The apartheid policy of racial discrimination, which sparked off deep resistance and violence, was without doubt evil and despicable, made even worse by state-sponsored aggression and repression. Understandably, Nigeria rose up in strong, vocal, and active condemnation, along with other countries, deploying all within its influence and control to end apartheid. Nigeria's interventions, internationally and locally, to end apartheid in South Africa can be traced to its foreign policy. At independence in 1960, the giant of Africa had made Africa the centerpiece of its foreign policy, with the cardinal goal of promoting and protecting the interests of Africans anywhere, everywhere in the world. The apartheid policy in South Africa thus provided a test case for Nigerian foreign policy drivers.
Due to the Pan-Africanist stance of the previous governments of Nigeria under dictatorship, we were forced to become Pan-Africanists in our foreign policies. We contributed greatly towards the South African struggle for emancipation.
The country was a leading voice in international condemnation of the dehumanizing system.
Apartheid in South Africa is a history of the debasement of the black race. It is a history of evil. It is a history of denigration of our existence as black people. The revolutionary struggle waged by the ANC and other progressive forces in South Africa was a struggle to restore the dignity of black man and to give hope to black people everywhere. Because the apartheid rule in South Africa has cast a very dark shadow in the politics of the world.
It rallied other powers within the then Organization of African Unity, OAU, the Commonwealth, the Non-Aligned Movement, and the United Nations Organization. The campaign heightened during the Murtala Obasanjo regimes. The nationalization of British Petroleum, the BP, by Nigeria as a result of crude oil supplies to apartheid South Africa sent a very strong message to the rest of the world and the apartheid regime that Nigeria will not tolerate the repressive rule in South Africa. The assets of British Petroleum Nigeria were taken over by the government and renamed African Petroleum in the true spirit of Pan-Africanism and unequivocal expression of Afrocentric thrust of Nigeria's foreign policy. Nigeria did not stop at that. It gave support to the African National Congress, ANC, the black political party that fought for freedom and equality in South Africa, but outlawed and criminalized by the apartheid system. This support was a lifeline that added muscle and vigor to the anti-apartheid struggle. It took various forms, ranging from facilitating the training of ANC operatives and activists within Nigeria and beyond, to enrollment of several black South Africans into Nigerian universities, including Thabo Mbeki, enrolled into Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, who later became president of a free, democratic South Africa. Monetary grants also went to ANC from the Nigerian government. Nigerian citizens were not left out in this magnanimity to needy African brothers. Nigerian students and ordinary people were equally active in the struggle to dislodge the apartheid, making monetary contributions to support the struggle. The active and non-compromising role of Nigeria earned it the status of frontline state despite its geographic distance from south coast of Africa. Nigeria also served as chair of the United Nations Anti-Apartheid Committee, spearheading several resolutions within the UN system with the unapologetic and uncompromising goal of putting the racist apartheid system down.
From the very beginning, when faced with this challenge of this shameless, oppressive apartheid regime, Nigerians volunteered to be on our side, showing themselves as convinced and committed partners.
Relations between Nigeria and the apartheid regime was expectedly very hostile. Things, however, took a new turn when majority rule was enthroned in South Africa and apartheid was defeated. The 1994 election was won by the African National Congress, ANC, led by Nelson Mandela. Nigeria and South Africa thereafter became the best of friends. This newfound friendship, however, had its low points.
Sometimes it has been difficult. Sometimes there have been forces that deliberately tried to undermine this relationship. But it is a relationship that has always been resilient because it is a relationship that is sealed in blood. The legacy of colonialism and apartheid is impacting on our current situation, trying to undermine our efforts to build our nation, to bring development in our countries.
The military regime of late Sani Abacha was isolated by the international community as a result of its refusal to commute the death sentences of some convicted environmental activists and to transfer power to a democratically elected government. Nigeria became a pariah state, and the new Nelson Mandela-led ANC government in South Africa joined the international condemnation of the military dictatorship in Nigeria. A diplomatic spat soon followed, resulting in the late Sani Abacha exchanging foul language with Nelson Mandela. Apparently to spite South Africa for joining the international crusade against the military regime, Abacha ordered the Nigerian senior national football team, the Super Eagles, to withdraw from defending the African Nations Cup in a tournament hosted by South Africa. Relations between the two nations, however, brightened with the demise of Abacha and the enthronement of democracy in Nigeria in 1999. Since then, the status of the two countries as the most powerful and largest economies in Africa came to the fore. The emergence of Olusegun Obasanjo and Thabo Mbeki as presidents in early 2000 saw the two powers take relations between them to new heights, one that is yet to be equaled or surpassed, bringing personal relationship into diplomatic relations. The two presidents jointly exerted much influence on Africa's policies and politics. It was through their initiative that the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, was formed.
In spirit, the ideal has been a successful awakening for our governments, but in true practice, we needed to deepen whatever NEPAD has started.
It was also during that period that the binational commission between both countries was established. The two countries also reached an agreement for a strategic partnership. Under this partnership, the two giants are expected to consult each other widely on African and global developments and take joint positions where necessary. Frequent visits at the presidential and high cabinet levels were the order of the day. The privatization and liberalization policies of the Obasanjo administration threw up a lot of opportunities in the Nigerian economy. Several South African firms took advantage of these and got footholds in the Nigerian economy. The telecommunication giant MTN, Standard Bank, and many others today are household names in Nigeria. On the Nigerian side, the Dangote Group invested about $400 million in South Africa's cement industry. First Bank of Nigeria opened a representative office in Johannesburg, and hundreds of thousands of skilled Nigerians are today in South Africa, engaged in professional jobs as a result of the country's expanding economy.
Nigerians are actively involved in South Africa. You will see them contributing in their very small way. Nigerians see South Africa today as a new London.
From retail banking and other financial services to the media and consumer products, Nigeria and South Africa are doing business with each other.
There's a two-way movement. When South African business comes here, it does not come alone. It comes here to partner with the Nigerian business in line with our government policy. And when business comes here, it also assists in making sure the Nigerians also go to South Africa. So, I mean, there are a lot of Nigerians that have invested in South Africa, and we really appreciate this. And we salute some of the business people, the way, they've excelled in making sure that now there's employment in South Africa, that the quality of life, the life of our people is improved.
Technically, it appears to favor Nigeria. But because the only item of trade is crude oil, while for the South Africa, they have so many companies, banks, all these other ones, doing businesses in Nigeria. We are trying to see how we can break this vicious circle.
When engaging with Nigerians and, of course, investing in Nigeria, we're trying to create a situation where we say a better South Africa, a better Nigeria, a better Africa in a world that is humane, that can also complement on the efforts that which we are making in improving our quality of life for our people in Africa.
Trade volume between the two countries rose to about $30 billion, with Nigeria's South Africa Chamber of Commerce fully operational and active.
Looking at how we can bridge the gap between Nigeria and South Africa. And that's where we actually started the Nigeria-South Africa Chamber of Commerce. And I think that was instrumental in really getting relationships going, because prior to that, because of the military rule and the environment between the two countries, it wasn't really a cordial, let's say, relationship at that stage. But the Chamber was a good platform to start the trade moving.
South Africa, like any other friendly partner of Nigeria in development, enjoys the privilege of investing in Nigeria and getting visa approval commensurate with investment levels. And so if the investment level is $1 million, we expect that we should be able to grant multiple entry visa to South Africa who wants to invest in Nigeria, and of course also upon application grant him quota positions of not less than 10.
As it is the case in bilateral engagements, the status of the two countries as the largest economies and regional powers in Africa soon became edgy, with noticeable adversity in their relations. After several years of isolation from the international community, South Africa, upon enthronement of egalitarian democracy, started to find its voice and place in the international community and within the African continent. It quickly joined the BRICS group and naturally sought resources and market from Africa to support its expanding economy. It also needed the political force and might to support this objective. This new South African posture inevitably pitched her against Nigeria. Before then, Nigeria had been the unrivaled political power in Africa. The country's growing economy is also eyeing resource from the continent. It is only a matter of time, therefore, before conflict developed. The Ivorian political crisis was the first time the two countries pitched against each other in an African issue. While Nigeria stood behind Alassane Ouattara in the struggle for the presidency of Côte d'Ivoire, South Africa was rooting for Laurent Gbagbo. Nigeria's move to mobilize a West African force to oust the government of Gbagbo was resisted by South Africa, which preached political settlement as a solution. There were reports that South Africa deployed one of its warships to the Ivorian coast to serve as deterrent to the Nigerian initiative. A similar scenario played out in Libya during the civil war that threw out Muammar Gaddafi. While Nigeria was in the league of countries that favored UN approval for the use of force to oust Gaddafi, South Africa again pushed for a negotiated political settlement.
Misunderstandings regarding Libya, which I believe historically Nigeria was right. Nigeria stayed on the path of freedom. I also on television commended and did suggest that Nigeria should be in the forefront of making freedom available in the part of Africa, the way we were there for Africans in South Africa, for them to gain freedom. I believe their judgments against Nigeria regarding the disagreements over Libya was based on reason versus emotions.
The rivalry was also taken to the diplomatic and multilateral level. Nigeria stood against South Africa's move to have its Home Affairs Minister replace Jean Ping as the chairperson of the African Union. Matters took an even divisive dimension in 2012 when the two nations deported each other's nationals. South Africa acted first by sending back Nigerians it claimed did not have requisite yellow fever inoculation certificates. Nigeria challenged and took exception to these actions, stoking diplomatic tensions. Before this, Nigeria had inundated the South African government with complaints of ill treatment of its nationals. Nigeria alleged that South African security forces had been unduly harsh on Nigerians. The issue then was that Nigerians were victims of a xenophobic backlash.
We've had the initial local social backlash against those who behave badly, but I believe nothing fundamentally has happened yet to discourage the sustained integration of Nigeria-South Africa life and business cooperation. I think we should deepen the cooperation and integration.
The last impasse between Nigeria and South Africa, occasioned by the allegation of non-possession of yellow fever vaccine cards by Nigerians who traveled to South Africa. You will recall that that episode at least attracted reciprocal treatment of South Africans who also traveled to Nigeria with irregular documents. But at the end of the day, a delegation from South Africa visited Nigeria, and that diplomatic role, so to say, had been settled. And on the basis of that, Nigeria and South Africa returned to normal diplomatic relations. We had agreed in a series of meetings to the run-up to this visit on visa waiver for Nigeria and South Africans bearing diplomatic and official passports for periods of upwards of 3 years. There is a whole lot of excitement on the part of South Africans and officials of Nigeria in reaching a permanent agreement towards reciprocal treatment of Nigerians that enter South Africa and South Africans that enter Nigeria. And there is no reported case of breach of the agreement that was reached after the row.
Despite these frosty moments, the two nations are of the full realization that they are strategic to each other and to the whole of Africa.
But looking at the two countries, it's inevitable that for the good of Africa, that these two economic and continental giants must cooperate for the good of Africa. Yes, we have had our missteps, we had misunderstandings, but those are no fundamental differences between us. Of reasons was about our positions regarding Gaddafi, and I believe that has become an issue of history. For the sake of the African continent, its biggest players economically and politically should always stay engaged, not only in a constructive form, but if you ask me, in an emotional form, for the good of the continent.
Strengthening these strategic engagement and partnership will advance the frontiers of their mutual interests.
We want to make sure that now we extend this understanding of history so that it does not reside with our leader Nelson Mandela, Jacob Zuma, or even Thabo Mbeki, or President Jonathan, or former President Obasanjo. It must go down to the people. We need to encourage people-to-people interaction, make sure that there's a movement between South Africa and Nigeria by ordinary people. We are actually trying to make sure that now our people do not have, and of course Nigerians, do not see each other as competitors or as people who are here to take this or this away from us. We are trying to create security within our people, and that security can only come through development. So we need to address the issue of poverty together. That is why we are strengthening the relationship between South Africa and Nigeria. And the advances that are made in terms of our relations now are going to dispel these perceptions that there are tensions. We want our people also to begin to see South Africa and Nigeria as one people. We can only succeed to be the galvanizers and the pivots of Africa by closing ranks, because we are the big countries, and that this bigness in us must be to the advantage of Africa, not only for us.
This much was the tone of a state visit by President Jacob Zuma to Abuja in April 2013, during which both nations stressed the need to continue to work together to drive the goal of regional peace and security.
I have come to Nigeria on a working visit to meet His Excellency the President, to consult on matters related to the two countries, but also on matters related to our continent. As you know, very soon, His Excellency the President will be visiting South Africa as a state visit, and therefore a lot of other issues that will necessarily be dealt with at that point will be certainly dealt with. There were a few matters we thought we needed to consult, particularly the situation in the continent of Africa. And we have had a very fruitful consultation. We believe that between Nigeria and South Africa, it's important to align and harmonize our thinking on the matters that need countries in the continent to take specific decisions. But at the core of some of the issues we raise is the issue of the security of the continent. As you know, that there has been some difficulties in a number of countries. We touched upon those issues and will certainly take the discussions further when we meet in South Africa.
A scheduled returned state visit of the Nigerian leader, Goodluck Jonathan, to Jacob Zuma in South Africa is in furtherance of this goal and would most certainly consolidate the already strong relation between the two nations, whose future appear intertwined as a tag team destined for greatness. Indeed, with the two regional powers rekindling and nurturing their shared destiny with warm embrace, this will surely make a formidable force within the global space.